here. 3.1 Intro to Consumer Credit. Yeah. It's going to start glitching out on me. And this is one area I kind of wish we still had the bank down there, the bench down there. Because last year when they were here, I got to come in and talk to the class, you know, about what they do with visions, right? Or no, not visions, it's IR, right? Pardon me? Yeah, okay. But anyway, so regarding consumer credit, you guys have probably heard and seen on TV commercials to know something about your credit score, your FICO score. Credit Karma is one way to check, right? It wasn't that long ago when you really didn't have that kind of access to credit before. So what is a credit report? Anybody know? I mean, you could go a little bit in there, right? Right, yeah. So when you take out a loan, right, almost every bank or lending institution will report your payment or non-payments and history of it to a one or more credit bureaus. There's three main ones. I'll write those down in a minute. And they use a formula. There's different formulas out there. The one that gets mostly used by most lenders is the FICO, F-I-C-O. That's at Fair Isaac Corporation. Okay? And this is an important number to know in your life and to make as high as possible. Come on. This is starting to glitch out on me. Mercedes, you might, or who was it? Might have another addition to the video compilation of my wig outs. FICO score. So when you make payments on time or don't make payments on time, or if you end up with too much credit card debt, or you have a lot of debt or not too much debt, or whatever your history is, right? There's a formula they put it into. It was really complex. I might go through it, right? But it ends up with you end up at the end of the formula, and it usually changes every month, right? With a number between, I think it ranges from like 300 at the lowest, like 850 at the highest, okay? So 300 credit score, nobody's going to loan you any money at all for any reason, right? I mean, that's, you know, you're kind of a derelict, you're paying nothing, right? And there's certain intervals, right? So banks will look at your credit score, and there's certain ranges they look for to rate you as poor, fair, good, right, excellent credit. And these intervals vary. So I'm going to write down some intervals up here on the board just to give you a sense of it. But different banks have different risk tolerances, right? So they may have slightly different intervals, right? But if you have a score, say, between 300 and like 579, well, that would be poor, right? That says that you're a poor credit risk, okay? Or with a high risk of defaulting, okay, not paying back what you owe. And then if you get up to, say, 580 to 669, right? Not too great, right? But we'll call that fair credit. Like, how's your credit? That's fair, which isn't, you're probably going to have some higher interest rates if you do get a loan in that range, right? We'll talk about why that would be in a minute. Then we could go from like 670 up to 739. Now we're starting to get pretty good for a credit score, okay? So that's good credit. Get a little higher than that, 740, say like 799. That's very good. Okay, and then anything over 800 or higher is, you know, I think 850, and I don't know like anybody has an 850. I mean, it's just like, it's like one of those numbers that's almost unattainable. Maybe there's somebody, but once you changes, that was last time I refinanced my house before the garage. It was up like 790s, something like that. I don't think it's quite that high anymore. Taking out some other debt, you know.
Got their loans.
Oh, I pay them, yeah. But part of the score is like how much debt you have, right? So that can also lower your score a little bit too. And then if you get like 800 to 850, you're looking at excellent classification. Right? And it's like, again, different institutions might have slightly like uppers, maybe they start counting excellent in like 775, right? Depends on the risk tolerance, that kind of thing, or how competitive they want to be, okay? So a lower score, right? If you have a lower score, right, that means you've got probably a lot of debt or other reasons for a lower score, be not making payments on time, maybe you file bankruptcy, that'll crush your score, right? If you have a score lower on here, right, if you do manage to get a loan through a bank, what do you think your interest rate will be compared to someone who has a higher score? Right. Well, okay, why? Lower, I should put score here. Implies higher interest. Glitching out on me. T-E-R-E-S-T. All right. Why would that be? So if the bank is assessing your risk as higher, what does the interest rate have to do with that? Okay, we're getting closer, right? So what they do is they like kind of pull everybody into the score range, right? So they have a pool of loans at good credit and very good, and another pool of excellent, right? And they have an interest rate for each of those different pools of people, right? So, and yeah, they make sure businesses to make money, right? And so you would imagine that if they're lending to a pool of fair credit risk people, it's probably going to be quite a few of them default and not pay the loan back, right? Well, how do they make up for that? Some of them will pay the loan back, of course, right? So how do they make up for the fact that they're going to be losing money on more of these people? Higher interest rates. So the ones that do pay, they're getting more revenue from them. Does that make sense? Right? So if you think of it as a pool of people in a certain risk category, right, you want to have a higher rate because more of them are liable to default. So you got to be able to make that up somewhere. And then, well, why would they bother doing a lower rate for these excellent credit people? Why don't they just keep the same high rate if you have excellent credit? Yeah, competition, right? Right, the lower a bank can advertise rates, the more people will want to borrow money from them, right? So there's a lot of banks around, and so it's less risk, so lower. So the higher, and this is a theme throughout finance, right? The higher the risk, even the stock market, right? Like if you plan on buying a risky stock, you want to see that it's going to have some pretty high returns for taking that risk, right? So higher risk demands a higher expected return. It's like, all right, I'll take the risk and loan to you, but I need to expect a higher return to offset this risk, if that makes sense. And you would do the same if you're buying stocks, okay? That kind of thing. So these scores come from there, and there's different models out there. Again, the FICO is the one you want to focus on, right? And Credit Karma, I don't know if they use FICO or not. I'm not sure. They might. Some places have their own little model to calculate these things. But when you take out a loan through a bank, they will report all your activity to these credit reporting agencies. Yupper. It's going to be a fun one. reporting agencies, and there's three main ones. Okay? There's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Experian, Equifax, some of these you may have heard of, and TransUnion. Okay? And some banks report to all of them, some banks report to one or just two of those, okay? And so you might have, if like you were able to check all three of these agencies for your credit score, it might vary a little bit, right? Because maybe one bank, one of your lenders that you have a loan through is reporting to Experian, but not Equifax, right? So Equifax might have a slightly different score. So that it's not wildly different, right? But these are the companies that calculate your credit score and give that back to the bank. And the bank pays them a fee for that service, so they know. Okay, so credit score. Well, like when you're loaning somebody money, you want to know some things, right, about them. Credit score would be one of them, right? What else might you want to know? Well, you're going to loan money to someone, they have to pay it back. So let's assume they have a good credit rating. What else would you want to consider to be able to make sure somebody can pay the loan back? What? Okay, their income, that you were saying, right? Okay. Like how much cash do they have on hand if something happens, or how like assets that they have, right? That if it comes right down to it, they could, you know, sell one of their homes to help pay the loan for whatever, right? Net worth, by the way, so we'll have to get into that in just a minute. So this is not in your book, I don't think exactly, but there's what's called the 5 C's of credit, okay? Huh? Well, it's only 5 of them. So there's what's known as, yeah, now that's on the video too. Your laugh. 5 C's of credit, or of lend, I should say of lending. What lenders will look at. Okay, and it's what I had to look at when I was taking applications for car loans and mortgages and promissory notes. Commercial loans from time to time. You know what a commercial loan is? Yeah, no, it's not a loan to do a commercial. Commercial loan is a loan to like start up a business or expand a business, right? There's a couple on Broad Street I remember back in the day, loan money. What's the one place? It's like it's got a stage or something in there, and people go down and play their instruments or something. No, not the Red Door. It's like down the road. It's another one. Huh? No, it's on Broad Street. Anyway, I remember that guy. Was it? Rail House? No, not the bar. Down the street from the. And by the way, a lot of banks, like the bank I work for, did not ever want to get into the food service industry. Boy, those are risky. If you look at any restaurant that opens, could you take a guess how long they actually stay open on average? Maybe 2 years. It's a really hard business to get into and maintain. Most of them fail in the first couple of years. But by the way, most of them don't even start making a profit until 2 or 3 years in, right? So it's a tough business. So 5 C's of lending. We want to look at character, the first C. Okay, so that your character, right? That, well, predominantly we'd be looking at the FICO score, right? FICO score, just kind of like your reputation, I guess, right? It's a numerical value to your financial reputation, okay? And that was a big one, but that's not the only thing, okay? You guys talked about having enough money, right? Enough income to cover what the payments will be, right? So we call that capacity, the capacity to pay it back, right? And one of the ratios that I would calculate, and our bank had a specific cutoff, right? If it's above this ratio, we're not making this loan for you, or we'll adjust it down so that it does fit, right? Would be like the debt to income ratio. D to I, right? Debt to income ratio. Right? If you take the customer's monthly income and divide it by all the loan payments he has plus the one he wants, right? You get a number, and you don't want it to be, I think ours was like, I want to say it's like 30%, but they're cut off at 35%. It's been a long time. But then different banks will have different tolerances for that too. Okay? So character, capacity, capital, that's just like money that you have, right? And assets that can be converted to money. Okay? So we'll just call that cash and other assets. Right, right. Yeah, because let's say you lose your job after you get this loan, and well, okay, maybe this guy's got the type of job that people bounce around in, and when they seasonal, does he have enough cash and assets he can quickly liquidate to pay this loan off for us, right? Collateral. Do you know what collateral is?
You do.
I do. I do, definitely do. So some loans are specifically, say, auto loan where you buy a car. And so when you take out that loan, the bank holds the car as collateral. Basically, they own your car, right? They have the title to it, or a lien is recorded on the title, like the title of that car. If you're taking a car loan out, it'll say on the title, you know, there's a lien with the bank and the address and all that stuff. And then when you pay off the loan, then you send your title to the bank, they clear the lien, so but anyway, so it could be a mortgage, so your home is collateral, right? So collateral, car, house, etc. And some loans don't have any collateral at all, right? They're unsecured. I'll ask you this then. What would be riskier? A bank loaning, you know, $10,000 to somebody to purchase a car with a car as collateral, or just $10,000 of what's called an unsecured loan with no collateral? What would be riskier for the bank? The note, right? Okay, because with a car, right, the bank has some recourse if you don't pay. Well, they're going to get your car, send the repo in, right? This is a funny story. Our bank, my second son was born. Our bank had just repossessed a limousine. We had it sitting in the parking lot. I had a stretch job. And so Mrs. Huffman was in the hospital. And I was at work. She, you know, of course I was there for the birth, but then she had spent a couple of days with me. And I was at work with my boss, or branch manager. She said, hey, get that limo out there. You pick up your kid at the limo with Duffy. She said, all right. So he found like a driver's derby hat, you know, he was the driver. And I walked, or I did the wheelchair, and we walked out to the traffic circle there. Where's the car? See this right there? It's a big stretch limo. And I already had the car seat belted in there. Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, my first son came home in 1993 Chevy Corsa. That was my first one. Okay, so and then the conditions. There is not going to be a third one. What do I mean by condition, right? Like the reason, the loan purpose, the purpose for the loan, the amount. Okay, so loan purpose, what do you need it for? The amount, the interest rate, etc. Okay, so character, capacity, capital, collateral, conditions, 5 C's of lending. Okay, so they don't just look at your FICO score.
Once we die.
Well, that's part of a risk. It's all built into the risk, what's called a risk premium. There's different risk premiums. Every interest rate has, you know, the prime rate plus a DR DRP, default risk premium, interest rate risk premium, right? It's all built into the interest rate. It's all like behind the scenes. Why is the interest rate what it is? Because they keep adding on to these different risks, a certain percentage. You know, I guess if you die, that would be the default risk premium. And again, that's where they want to see if you have other assets, right? So when you die and everything goes into probate and the attorneys take over and settle your estate and all your debts, they want to make sure, okay, does he have enough assets to pay off this loan if he dies? You know? I hope people continue to make payments. Anyway. And so regarding capital, one thing you've probably heard of is net worth. Somebody's net worth or the net worth of the business. Okay, we need to know about net worth. We're not talking about like your humanitarian worth, no. Financial, right? So assets minus liabilities, right? Net worth equals the value of all your assets minus the liabilities. Okay, assets are what you own. And liabilities are what you owe. That makes sense? So if we look at one asset, right? Like you've got a car. And let's say you look up the Blue Book value of your car and it's worth $20,000. You know, you have a loan you've been paying on. The loan is currently you only owe $15,000 on the loan. What would be the net worth? $5,000. That makes sense, right? So there's the value of all your assets minus all your liabilities.
They don't really own all that money today.
It's not all in cash. No. Like when you see someone has a net worth of $1 billion, they don't have a pile of cash. People think that, right? Cash is not the only asset. That's only one asset, right? So like the value of the plant they use to manufacture stuff, right? That's not cash. And in fact, like people think, oh, why should somebody have all that money? It's not just money. It's not just cash, right? It's stuff that produces things, right? And like there's probably not even enough cash on the planet to liquidate all of what they own, you know? So like, I don't know what people are talking. It's this misconception that billionaires just have piles of cash that no one else can have.
I mean, they do.
It's not how it works.
They got piles of cash.
Well, some of it, yeah, that's just one form of an asset is cash, right? It's the most liquid form of an asset. Right, not liquid yet, right? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't say, that's the other thing. People think, you know, because someone has all this wealth, they call it hoarding wealth, which implies that since they have it, you can't get wealthy. No, man, it doesn't work like that. It's value added. We'll get into that later. I mean, it look like it's straight three of you out here anyway, some of this stuff. But, all right, so that's that business. Let me ask you a question. Because I had a guy at the bank, and I had to go over my head to get this guy a mortgage. He was probably 65 years old or something. In his entire life, he never borrowed money. He paid cash for every vehicle. He paid cash for every home he ever bought. Never had a credit card, right? So he had no credit. He had no FICO score, right? There was no FICO score. So he came into me, and he was in a situation, he needed to help out one of his kids or something, and help take out a mortgage, like, whatever it was. And I pulled up his credit score, and according to there's no score. So according to my constraints as a loan officer there that the bank sets in place, I couldn't loan him money, right? But the nice thing about working for like smaller banks is it's not all formulaic, right? So I went to my boss, the limo driver, right? And I said, what, this guy here? He says, yeah, I know this guy. He says, he probably doesn't have a score, right? I said, no, you don't have a score. I can't really do anything for him, you know? So he loaned him the money because he had all the other C's were in place. I mean, this man had net worth up in yin yang, right?
So it's pretty much under the table.
No, we put it on the table, you know, the money on the table.
Why wasn't it legit?
No, and it was legit, right? No, it was, but in certain situations, like if you're working for one of the big banks, there's like no one to talk to, there's no one that can just like override policy, you know what I mean? It's all just like baked into the computer
So
program,
you got,
and it spits out a yes or no when you do the application online, right?
get a credit score after that?
Well, after that, sure, right? And he finally said, yeah, we'll go ahead and give him the loan because everything else is in place. I mean, he had all the other C's were in place, perfect. I mean, it was golden, except for the FICO score. He didn't have one. And, so, yeah, so after that, I'm sure he, you know, the bank would report his monthly payments. Okay? All right. So there's all kinds of different lenders out there, right? You probably read in there. Banks, obviously. Pawn shops.
Mafia.
The mafia. Yeah, with Cosa Nostra there.
You don't pay your loan, wait for it.
Yeah, you want to pay that back. So they have something other than interest rates that they use to reduce their risk, right? It's all part of risk management, right? If you threaten to break someone's leg, the risk of them defaulting goes down. You see, right? I don't think it's in any risk management book, but you know, they're in Sicily. It's done. Anyway, what else was in there? By the way? Some other terms we need to know. So, but okay. If you're borrowing money, you're a debtor, D-E-B-T-O-R, right? And the person that loans you the money is a creditor, okay? At the bottom of page 148, we're talking about assets, earning power, credit. That's the 5 C's I just gave you, so I kind of changed that a little bit from what was in the book. Installment plan, right? That's where you make monthly pay. There's other kind of notes, right? There's timed notes. There's loans that are timed notes where, and I had these at the bank too. Somebody like I think it was a farmer needed like $10,000 to do something. They could pay it back in 6 months, right? And there was no monthly payment. It was just he paid in 6 months. He came in and paid the $10,000 plus interest at the end of the 6 months, right? So that's called the promissory note or time note, huh? Yeah. I wasn't going to let, right? I know what I'm looking for, right? I wasn't going to let him money.
Does someone ever try to knock the bank through that?
No, but one of the other branches down in Pennsylvania somewhere got robbed. I can't remember when that was. This is back like early 2000s, almost 20 years ago. Oh yeah, so there's deferred payment plans, like some shops will offer deferred payment plans, so they're kind of a lender too. Like if you go to a mom and pop shop and they say, okay, we'll sell you this refrigerator, you don't have to start making any payments for 6 months, right? But if you pay the whole thing off in 6 months, there's no interest. If you go past 6 months, so it's like it's kind of tempting you to come in and buy it from them, right? Oh, I can pay this off in 6 months, and if not, who cares? 6 months from now, I don't worry about that. Sure. And then there's then the payday store. I'm going to give you an example of payday. You ever heard of the payday store? Payday shop? No. I don't think even in New York is legal anymore, but like, if you're really desperate for money, you're not going to get paid until next Friday. You need cash, you can go down, and they'll give you like an overnight loan, you know, for $500 or something. You get your paycheck, you come back and pay them with interest. If someone's in that situation, pretty risky, yeah. Yeah. So you would think that this kind of desperation loan would carry a really high interest rate, right? It sure does. We'll look at exactly what that rate is in a minute. And in New York, and I don't know why, but in New York they're illegal. They call it loan sharking, which is charging an interest rate above a certain amount. I don't know, 30% or something like that. Yeah, well, that's the amount, right? That's on the table. But I say, and I disagree with these loan sharking laws. We can get into that later. I think they should be allowed. Right? It's like a certain, that's what you need, and that's a certain rate. So New York State laws denying you what you really need in your situation, like anybody. More libertarian than anything. Let's take a look at some of these examples. Blathering on too much. What's going on in example 1 there, Mercedes? It's a pretty simple one.
Heather wants to purchase an electric guitar. The price of the guitar with taxes is $2,000 $40. If she can save $90 how long will it take her to save up for a good guitar?
Well, it's pretty simple. So you don't want to borrow money or anything like that. So why don't you just save up enough to get it? What are we going to do here? It costs how much? And she can save 90 a month. So what do we do to figure out like how many months it'll take her? Just divide by 90. This is almost not even worth our time, right? Right, that. By $90, right? And it's going to take her about 25 months. How many years is that?
2 years, and still thinking about that guitar,
2 years. Okay, so there you go. Let's see. 2 years, 1 month. So maybe, you know, it's worth the convenience of buying it now to pay a little interest, right? So interest, wouldn't you call that like a convenience fee? Like what would happen? Like if you had to buy a $250,000 house, right? You ready? You got a family, got to move in somewhere, right? You don't have $250,000. Do you think you should? Would it be inconvenient to try and save up the $250,000 before you move in? It'd be really right. So you might just decide, okay, I'll pay some interest and borrow money, and you know, convenience costs money, and that's interest. Right? To you, it's convenience. To them, it's risk management, right? And also income. They have an interest. So how do the banks make money, right? They pay you interest on your savings account, CDs and stuff, right? We did that in the last chapter. And you pay them interest with loans. And then they use the money from the savings to loan people, right? And so they make money on what's called the interest rate spread. They can say that overall their savings account interest rates are at 2% that they pay out, but their average loans are at 5 or 6% that they come in. So that's the interest rate spread. It's not going to be fun. That makes sense?
How much money can a bank loan at a time?
What's that?
How much money can a bank loan at a time?
Well, there's no legal limit. It depends on the size of the bank.
So I'm just walking through, all right, I want $1 million, which you go, all right,
Yeah, it works just like that. But try that, Bill. Let us know how you make that. Okay. All right, let's go to example 2. Is this the one? Wait a minute. Because some of this is going to be like what we did with the savings, but it's all going to be like inverted now, because now you're the one paying, right? Simone, read example 2. It's based on example 1.
Please speak to the salesperson and buy the guitar on installment basis. Requires 15% down payment. The remainder plus a finance charge is paid back on a monthly basis for the next 2 years. Payment is $88.75.
So the finance charge. You remember when you had like we did the compound interest formula, right? To find out what was the balance in the savings account after 3 years, and then okay, how much interest did you actually earn? And you subtract the original amount you put in, right? This is kind of the same here, except now we need to get the total, well, the price of the guitar, right? So if we get the total of all the payments she makes for this guitar and then subtract the original price from that, would that be the actual finance charge? So let's work out the total of payments. What's her first payment? What happens? To about 15% down, right? So that's the first thing she pays out to him. So 15% of 2240. How do we write that? 0.15 times 2240, right? So she pays that out. And then what does she pay each month after that? How much? Okay, so plus 88.75 for how many months? 24 of them. So she does that 24 times. See what I'm doing? I'm doing a little differently the way they, you see where I'm getting at with this? Okay? So I think this comes out to like 336, is that right? Plus 2130. Did I get that right? Right, so that's her down payment, and all her payments sold to 2130, so that gives her a total of what she paid for the guitar, of $24.66. Okay? So by taking this route, she's paying more money to get the guitar, but she's getting it now. Convenience, right? We'll say, what was the finance charge then? Yeah. So the finance charge, you just subtract it. So it'd be the 2466 minus the 2240. Was it 266? Right? Now, if she'd done it the original way, you know, she wouldn't have to pay 266 extra, but I guess she decided it was worth it, right? And that's the thing you should do, right? Interest rates, yeah, but you should always kind of take a look at what this total amount of interest I'm paying on this thing. Is it worth that to me, you know, to do it? I would say it's pretty reasonable because over the course of what, 2 years, $266. You?
Yeah.
It's up to you, right? Everyone cares. All right. Maybe. That's going to be another point of consideration for you, right, before you took the plunge. All right, let's, Dylan, read example 3, would you?
Our continuous trend in tree sales, student promotion. All purchases to be paid on the installment plan for purchases, as long as it's full pays for the next 6 months. There is a $20 minimum monthly fee required. The Schuster family buys property for $2,134. Next one is minimum payment for 5 months. How much will they have to pay?
6 months. Okay.
It's not a car for $2,000.
That's actually not outrageous. Probably not cheap.
Check it out.
Make your own carpet. You have all that loom with it. All right, so how much you have to pay in the 6th month? So she makes some payments for 5 months, right? And the minimum is $20. So what's her total of payments? It's the $20 times 5 months, right? So she's paid over those 5 months $100. But then she's got to pay the whole thing off now, right? What was the cost of it originally? $134. So for the 6th month, how are we going to figure out what she owes? Just an old negative. 2134 minus 100, right? 2134 minus the 100 she paid over the course of the 5 months, right? So she'll have to come up with $2,034 in the 6th month. And if you don't have that in cash, maybe you can take out a small loan or something like that, or what have you, right? But that's the only one. Oh, I'll tell you what, wood floors are, they're even more expensive than carpet. A big piece of old floor or something like that. All right. Okay. The next one's kind of interesting here. Let's go to example 4, and here's where we're going to use our formula for like future value or compound interest, but now it's going to go the other way, right? Mercedes, read over example 4, if you would, please.
Cecilia purchased $4,322 worth of tall appliances deferred payment. The plan allows the customer to make no down payment, and there is no payment at all for 3 months. If the entire $4,322 is paid in full before the 3 months is up, there is no interest. This is the store's way to persuade customers to make purchases. If it is not paid in full within the 3 months, there is a finance charge with an APR of 21.6% applied each month going back to the first month. If Cecilia makes the full payment a week after the 3 months expire,
That's key.
what is the finance charge?
So So she's gone past the, like, the expiration point of this deal, right? And now, remember when it happens, they go back and retroactively charge interest on those months, right? So we need to figure out finance charge by getting the total, well, what would be, have been balanced, like if it's a savings account, the last chapter, right? We're gonna use this formula, okay? So that B is gonna be like the total of everything she paid for the loan, compounded monthly, right? So N is 12. And T, remember, is time in years. That's gonna be, we gotta think about this T here in just a minute. So let's work out, so the balance can be the original amount borrowed, right, which was 4322 times 1 plus 0.216, that's a high rate, 0.216 compounded monthly over 12, right? Now here we go. To the 12, this is for 3 months. T is time in years, right? T is in years, but this is only for 3 months. So what is it going to be? 0.3?
Well, no, I mean, 3.
What fraction of a year is 3 months? 3 twelfths. Yeah. So 12. So you get the idea here? Times 3 twelfths. Right? Remember, because T is time in years. How many years? Well, not one, full one, 3 twelfths, right? Which is 1/4, by the way. But anyway, won't the 12s cancel up there? Right? So you get balance equals 4, 3, 2, 2. Did I work that out? Oh. I did. Oh yeah, you do that in your head. Go ahead. So basically, it's 1 plus this mess, 0.216 over 12 to the right, just to the third. Does that make sense? And end up paying back 45.59.61. On something that costs 43.22. So the finance charge, very simply, again, just subtract the 2, right? So the finance charge equals that. 61 minus 43.22, and you should get 237.61. 237. Yeah, it just doesn't matter if I hit erase or not. So that's the convenience, right, of getting something now rather than saving up for it, okay? All right, I want to make sure you guys can do this. So there's a check right after this. What we did here, you guys read the check over and compute the finance charge. So hopefully you're doing this part now, doing the 322. 1 plus 216, 12 to the 2. Anybody get the total of all the payments there? It's compounded monthly.
8,214
No, I don't think so. Check your button pushing again.
Oh.
There we go. You'll rectify it. Someone else get, I just want the total of all payments right now. Yeah, 66, 31, 80, right? There you go. But finance charge, right? So now we got to subtract. Like it's like finance charge is what you paid above and beyond the original sale price. Huh? Yeah.
How do you do that?
How do you subtract? No one really knows for sure. One of those mathematical mysteries that's baffled mathematicians for centuries. Actually, on a technical matter, in mathematics, if you want to get into some real esoteric mathematics, subtraction doesn't actually exist. Neither does division. I don't get started on that. Because it's inconsistent with all the properties of things. Minus 4, 3, 2, 2. Did we get 2309.80 as a finance charge?
Yes, so,
No guess. Okay. Well, that's pretty significant, right? That, I'm not, I don't know if that's worth the convenience. For me anyway, I don't know, maybe somebody else, right? Like the guy at the Get Me Done at the dealership there. Maybe for him, he doesn't care, right? He probably won't even do this calculation because, again, you're not going to pay it back anyway. He's worried about it. Oh, yeah, you're right. The guy said you're right to me. And then he walked out happy, driving his new car away. But again, like the dealership, we didn't actually loan them money, right? We have banks that we fax their applications to see what's like throwing, what against the wall and see what sticks, right? Well, one of them stuck.
well, I guess we got his car, that's all after that.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Depending on and that bank probably had a real itchy, like this guy's credit was so bad that he was in that pool where they would have a real itchy trigger finger with the repo guy. Like I'd say within less than a week later with payment, he probably got the record showing up, the rollback showing up in his driveway. So, all right. One more example here. I don't know, people strange, man.
Because now you don't have your car and you pay that stuff.
Yeah, well, and then you think, oh, your credit's much worse now. It doesn't get much worse than this guy had. Anyway, so that was a risk he didn't have to face. All right, let's do example 5 here real quick. And then we're not going to do example 6. See this, right? We're glitching. Look at that, see? It's erasing. Oh, sweet Maria. This is incredible. All right. Hey, Simone, read example 5. I don't remember what that was about.
Certain towns had a huge sale on large screen TV. Anita purchased a 60-inch large screen TV for $2,045. This purchase was made on a 6-month layaway plan. She had planned to pay a monthly payment of $265.
We didn't talk about layaway, but you guys know what layaway is? Walmart does that a lot, right? Like, you make payments, but you don't receive the product until you finish paying, right? So they'll set it aside, hold it for you, right? You got a cooler somewhere in the back.
That's a big TV.
What size is it?
That's 5 feet.
Yeah, this is 65 inches. They're big now, man. I got my first flat screen like 11 years ago. I still have it, and it was 47 inches. Can't you? Right? Done. And now everyone's got, I got a 50, so I got a 60.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right, let's do this real quick. Put a bow on it. So finance charge.
I don't know. I don't know.
Either one. Whatever pulls your hair back.
Goes on your chest.
So this is slightly different, right? So layaway plan, you're going to be paying a little bit for the convenience, right? So we're making $361 payments for 6 months, right? So we figure out how much you paid all together minus the original sale price of the thing. How do we figure out what she paid all together? 361 times 6. I'm going to do this in one smooth, single operation here. That's the total of payments, right? So this is our total minus the original sales price. What was it? 204,515. So her finance charge comes out to 120.85. For the convenience, look at the screen. Look at that. Just like why? Oh, you see, that's eraser for some reason. Why? What goes on here? I didn't. It was still highlighted with pen.
Would you like me to go up there and change?
Yeah, how about for the rest of the year? You'll be the instructor, professor, right? You guys get that, right? I don't think we need to do the check.
No, I don't think I got it.
You don't get it? You understand it?
No,
Let's do that then. That's unfortunate. All right.